everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the Coolidge City Council to order and ask that you stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Gilbert Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Steve Hudson.
Here.
Councilmember Robert Huddleston.
Here.
Mayor John Thompson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jackie Henry.
Here.
Councilmember Gary Lewis.
Here.
And Councilmember Tatiana Murrieta.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, everybody's here for the record. First item on the agenda is presentations. Introduction of new hires for the city of Coolidge. Norma, that's you. And I would like to have the city council come down so we can shake their hands.
Right.
Good evening, everyone. Honorable Mayor and Council. Tonight we will be recognizing and introducing new hired staff for the City of Coolidge. We'd like to take this time to introduce them and just basically show our appreciation for joining the City of Coolidge. It's always our goal to hire valuable and much needed employees to join our team. So at this time I'd like to introduce Danae Blackcloud. She's the Administrative Assistant in the City Clerk's Department, which is mine. We have Christopher Carr, transit driver / dispatcher. Teresa Kenyon, transit driver, dispatcher. Some of these employees might be working currently or just weren't able to attend, but we'll still introduce them. Nancy Baca, she's a part-time transit driver and dispatcher in the transit department. Barbara Awayo, part-time transit driver and dispatcher in the transit department. In the library department, we have Christina Hederman. She's our part-time library page. We have Victor Mendoza. He's also a part-time library page. In the police department, we have Carl Bowers, public safety dispatcher. Amberly Henry, police records clerk. Landon McDonald, police officer. Garrett Keene, police officer. And in the Public Works Department, we have Gregory Brannon as street maintenance and heavy equipment operator. It's an honor to have them all join our team. Thank you, everyone.
You're doing good.
That completes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
The next item is Employee of the Year. Steve, you're probably going to want to just introduce yourself. The Employee of the Year is Tim Harrison, Fire Captain. On behalf of the City of Coolidge, I want to take this time to congratulate you on being selected Employee of the Year. Where is he? Come on up, Tim. You have been with the City of Coolidge for 8 years full-time, 18 years overall, and have contributed to the improvement and development of the fire department. Tim, as a captain, is expected to run calls for service, ensure that the station and equipment is maintained, and supervise the on-duty crew. However, Tim really stepped up to the challenge given to him by Chief Jarvis to assist him in his transition to the city of Coolidge. Tim has been active in promoting the fire department and safety in the community. Not only did Tim help the fire chief, he embraced the chief's challenge of engaging the public in the philosophy of community risk reduction. Chief Jarvis asked the duty crew watch at least one nationally recognized webinar a week and have an open discussion during lunch as a way to see past the standard fire service views, evaluate Coolidge Fire, and consider other ways for the fire department to do business better and safer. Classes such as reading smoke, advanced standpipe operations, and a controversial by today's fire service, leadership, a culture of extinguishment. Tim took it upon himself to make sure they continued that trend without relying on the fire chief to find all the webinars. He found training, liabilities 2014, staying out of the danger zone, among others, for the crew to watch during lunch. Taking that extra step shows that Tim has taken responsibility and assuming liability for his crew's readiness. True traits of leadership, not to mention making productive use of time during lunch and training time. We better check with our HR to see if we got to pay him for working through lunch. Tim has continued this all year with no signs of stopping. Tim's efforts have made a tremendous impact on the public safety of Coolidge. Tim, on behalf of myself, the City Council, and staff, I present you the Employee of the Year Award for 2014-2015. We thank you for the continued leadership and dedication to the City of Coolidge and community.
Not sure. Councilmember Lopez, I'm not sure you were in that picture.
I know.
The wide angle.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next on the agenda, is that item 4? I don't know, you've got the
It is
agenda.
It is item 5.
5, okay, sorry. Aubrey Coet and Danielle Duran, Library and Library Assistant, City of Coolidge. On behalf of the City of Coolidge, I want to take this time to congratulate you on being selected employees of the quarter. During your time with the City of Coolidge, you have made a tremendous impact on our library. And they're both from the library, by the way. In the past year, you went above and beyond your normal duties when you envisioned and then flawlessly executed the Coolidge Mini-Con for the library's summer reading program kickoff party. In keeping with this year's summer reading theme, Every Hero Has a Story, you suggested the library offer the community a kickoff party unlike anything the library has ever done before, a free Comic Con. However, rather than make the mini-con all about comic book heroes, you celebrated all heroes, not just the ones who wear capes. You collaborated with local service organizations, including the Junior ROTC, Coolidge Youth Coalition, STAND, the schools, and many other city departments. Throughout this collaboration, the event truly became a community-wide party. However, you did not even stop there. You brought in other nonprofit Comic Con groups from outside of Pinal County, giving the community a truer, bigger-than-life Comic-Con experience. You coordinated all the necessary logistics with the Parks and Rec staff, put in many extra hours preparing materials and decorations, and maintained contact with all the community partners. The event was a huge success, probably one of the best programs ever offered by the library. Nearly 500 attended, and almost 150 people registered for the summer reading program. Far more than ever registered at a kickoff event in the past. Your dedication to this event makes it perfect, goes above and beyond the project. Danny and Aubrey, your effort and devotion to the library reflect your desire to provide quality services for all the citizens. For this effort, we thank you. Once again, congratulations on being selected employees of the quarter. Keep up the good work. Okay, item number 6 is a proclamation. Drowning Impact Awareness Month, August 2015. Whereas Drowning Impact Awareness Month will raise awareness that the number and impact of child drownings in Arizona affects everyone, and whereas the drowning incidents in Arizona take the lives of the equivalent of a classroom of children each year, and whereas a child drowning can happen to any family regardless of education, race, or social economic background, and whereas families can take simple steps to protect their children around water to avoid the tragedy of unnecessary loss of life, and whereas water safety remains a priority for Arizona families, communities, and government, and water watchers at Phoenix Children's Hospital, and whereas keeping children healthy and safe is the goal of water watchers at Phoenix Children's Hospital, fire departments, and other prevention institutes in Arizona. Raising awareness will increase understanding and education of effective ways to prevent drownings. Now, therefore, I, John Thompson, Mayor of Coolidge, do hereby proclaim August 1st through August 31st, 2015, as Drowning Impact Awareness Month in the City of Coolidge. Item number 7 is the monthly report and business spotlight recognitions by the Coolidge Chamber of Commerce. There she is. Welcome, Lynn.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm proud to present our August Business Spotlight, which is custom cuts by Celeste. And I'd like to introduce Celeste Adele Carter.
Good evening. Thank you so much for your time. I'd like to introduce my father. This is Gene Carter. I'm the 4th generation here in Coolidge. My family came here from Lotland, Oklahoma in 1934. And because of the small town, my family's been here all these years, and I intend on continuing to be here for further generations. I'm presently right next to Tags, which is the other oldest business here in town. This is hard for me. I'm not used to talking to people directly. If you guys can turn around, it'd be a whole lot easier to talk to you. So bear with me, but thank you so much for all you've done for me in the last 3 years that I've been here. I did come from Luke Air Force Base. I had 3 shops out there for 15 years. So I do the old-fashioned haircut, shave around the ears, on the neck, little massage, stink pretty, and you're ready to go out the door. So thank you so much for everything.
Well, thank you.
One thing about Celeste, she loves Coolidge and the small town comfort with the people here. And now for our June reports. Reinvestments for June are AAA, Curves, Mount Athos Restaurant and Cafe, Fast Med Urgent Care, Rancho Sonora Inn and RV Park, JD Financial, Bright International Right-of-Way Disposal, Casa Grande Trap and Skeet, Brown's Amusement, Dave Knowlton, Lyle Gilbertson, Southwest Gas Corporation, Great Southwest Radio Theater, and our new membership is Griffin Specialty Products and Services. That's down there on Coolidge Avenue. You know where I'm talking about. The new members for June are August, Abuse Inc., Gary Johnson Associate, Casa de Blanca Studio. And our statistics for this year on the web page hits, it's up. We talked about this. That difference is not so far off. I don't think it's 297%. It's the way it was reported. But our web hits are 166,122. Our walk-ins are up 64%. Our phone calls are up 17%. We had 2 relocation packets sent out, and that would be Arizona and Michigan. We had no foreign visitors in June. Casa Grande Ruins had 2,594 visitors. Year to date, they have 50,150 people that went through. Some events that are going on. We're going to have our ribbon cutting Thursday, August 13th at the Chamber. On August 14th, there's going to be a kids decorating class. August 15th, there's going to be just a overall cupcake decorating class. We have our membership luncheon on the 19th. And we also, the library has a plan, shop, and save on the 19th. August 21st, there's a grab a brush and let's paint. And we also have starting our community youth theater. And August 22nd, we have a Carlos painting class. August 26th, sugar cookie decorating. And August 28th, there's a Walmart ribbon cutting. And the 29th is beginning mosaics. You have any questions? A lot going on. It's starting to get going again.
Yeah, I noticed. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is something that I'm particularly happy about. This will be the swearing in of the newly appointed Coolidge Youth Council members. Do you guys want to go down and shake their hands after they get sworn in, or? Sure. Okay. So don't run off. They're going to swear you in, and then we're going to meet each other and go from there.
Yes, if all the members of the new established Coolidge Youth Council could come up to the front, please. See if we can get you all in there. This is going to be a little tricky because there's so many of you, so speak up really loud because I don't know if we can get you all on the for the camera to pick you up. So at this time, I will administer the oath of office. When I ask you to please state your name, you'll each state your name, and then you'll also, when I ask you to state your office, you will all state your office of either chairman, vice chairman, secretary, and or council member. Okay? So at this time, will you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, please state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona and of the city of Coolidge, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of according to the best of my ability. So help me God. Thank you. Ricky, did you want to share anything?
Watch your step there. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations. Thank you, sir. Yeah,
Good job. Great job, guys.
There you are.
Congratulations. For a video.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
But now you go on vacation.
You just put them up here. Let them have this agenda.
You gotta hug everybody. That's kind of jealous. That's awesome. You're real kids? Oh, that's a good analogy.
You council members enjoy it now, because once the public finds out who you are and you got to go to work, it's not going to be all fun and games. Okay. Next item on the agenda is call to the public. This is a time when anybody in the audience has 3 to 5 minutes to come up and address the council. We cannot comment on what you address us, the subject you address us to. But if there's anybody in the audience that has anything they want to let us know, now's the time. I'm seeing nobody approach. I will move on to the next item, which is approval of minutes. And these would be item 9, budget meeting, or city council budget meeting, May 11th, 2015. Number 10, city council A regular meeting, May 11, 2015. Number 11, City Council Budget Meeting, May 26, 2015. Number 12, City Council Regular Meeting, May 26, 2015. Item 13, City Council Special Meeting, July 6, 2015. And item 14, City Council Regular Meeting, July 13, 2015. If there are no comments, I would look for a motion to approve this.
Motion approved is read.
Second.
Motion approved and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, we'll move into the business items for consent. And I would ask now, before I start reading these, if there is anybody here that wants to see any of these items pulled off the consent agenda. Let's start down on this end. Councilmember Marietta?
No.
Councilmember Lewis?
Number 18.
Okay.
19.
17.
Oh, Mayor? Number 16 as well.
No.
Okay. Then I'm going to read items 15 through 24, omitting 16, 17, 18, and 19. Item number 15, consider approval of entering into a maintenance service agreement between Canyon State Wireless and the City of Coolidge for continued maintenance service of the Police Department Dispatch Center, the base radios, and the new repeaters for the Police, Fire, and Public Works Departments for FY 15-16. 20, consider approval of change order number 1 and number 2 submitted by Cactus Asphalt on the Randolph Road East and West State Route 87 project funded by the City of Coolidge and Arizona Commerce Authority for a total reduction of $5,334.62. Item 21, consider approval of entering into a sewer easement agreement between McDonald's Real Estate Company and the City of Coolidge to allow access to a monitoring manhole, authorizing the mayor to execute the necessary documents. Item 22, approve the second amendment to the purchase and sale agreement between the City of Coolidge and Bright International. Item 23, resolution number 15-26, a resolution of the mayor and the City Council of the City of Coolidge, Arizona, authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into the grant agreement between the United States of America, acting through the Federal Aviation Administration, and the City of Coolidge for a grant of federal funds for the design of the rehabilitation and expansion of Taxiway B at the Coolidge Municipal Airport. And item number 24, consider approval of entering into a memorandum of understanding between the Arizona Department of Revenue and the City of Coolidge for the collection of municipal transaction privilege tax. I see there's a revolution in the Norma, so you'll have to, okay.
Do a roll call.
So items, where'd we go? Number 15, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. Roll call.
Need a motion?
We need a
Need a
motion.
motion?
Yeah, in a second.
Mr. Mayor, move to approve those items. as read.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, she's got a resolution.
Vice Mayor Henry,
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis,
No.
Councilmember Murrieta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hudson,
Yes.
Councilmember Huddleston,
Yes.
and Mayor Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to item number 16. Consider approval to unfreeze the capital sales tax fund for the purpose of making repairs to city buildings for FY 14-15 and FY 15-16. Who wanted this one pulled?
I believe I asked for that one, sir.
All right.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I just wanted more information on what the funds are, because it doesn't list an amount. And what repairs you're needing, if they're detrimental to city services or not.
Okay, I guess I don't understand the question. Can you go through again?
The
please?
amount that you're asking to use, there's no amount listed, and
Oh.
if the repairs are something that's detrimental to the operation of the city or not.
About 3 years ago, we were asked to go through and evaluate all the buildings and come up with items that needed to be repaired in order to make sure that we have some comfort in the buildings. That, you know, we had some pretty ratty roofs we had that were leaking and had some issues, parking lots that were getting to the point where people were tripping and having some issues, carpeting also that was wearing out, and some painting that needed to happen. And the decision at that point in time was to kind of start doing a group of those every year. So in 13-14 we started some of those, 14-15, and now we're also looking at 15-16. So in 13-14 we had asked for about $113,400 to move forward. Completed a good majority of those, although we had moved some forward, such as the vehicle maintenance shop, wash, sink, sewer. Challenges with that is probably not something we can just directly put that into our sewer. We have to tie it into our wash bay area to make sure that we have a proper sand trap on that. So we've been kind of, you know, delaying on that and not utilizing that sink until such time. Moving into 14-15, we finished a lot of the roofs and a lot of the carpeting in the city. It included some electrical work, some awnings, and some of those things. So the items really have been there to kind of keep ADA capacities up. It's there to basically make sure that we don't have tripping hazards with rocks or with rugs and carpeting, you know, painting, just so that the buildings don't disappear. This year we are looking at $150,200 to do the work. Items that are included in that list, and I apologize, that was last year, $150,200. I'm sorry, $103,400 for this year. We are including some HVAC units, some painting, some additional awnings. The awnings that are put in one of them is the awning for the back door here. We get a lot of water that rolls in when we get some of these bad monsoon storms, so it's to basically protect the flooring. We have awning over the mechanical pad where we have to do some of our larger equipment. We don't have any shade. The equipment gets hot, the tools get hot, so we're asking for that. There's carpeting in the locker room. It does have some mold in it, and we can't get it clean enough, so we're wanting to repair it. So what I will tell you is I think most of the work that we're doing is something to keep us safe and healthy and keep good maintenance done on the buildings. So do you have any other questions than that?
That's it, and I thank you.
All right, thank you.
I only have one, Susanna, is there's no guarantee all this work will get done, right?
Correct. We are working really hard at doing most of it, but sometimes other things happen and we end up having to, you know, move around on priorities. So we do continue to roll forward with things. If they're approved here and we don't get them done, we will ask to move them to next year's budget. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, and just so the public knows that these can be looked on for the city clerk's website, and everything's listed on here with the amounts, so they can see what's going on if they want to go through that after your presentation. They actually can go right on the website and see all the information that we see. So, thank you. Very thorough.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think when we had the retreat here, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, we had priorities that we wanted. One was the streets, and another one was maintaining the city buildings. It's no different than your own home. I mean, if you let these things go by, it's going to cost you a lot more money in the long run. So I think the money's well spent. We got to take care of our own house.
Correct.
What was the final tally?
So I'm sorry. For this year, we're looking at $103,400.
Anything down here?
Go ahead.
I know when you redid the city hall, it made it look like a total new building. And I think that, when the public comes in and it's fresh and everything, it makes a difference.
I had no questions until after you said what you said. I think all the improvements are great, and we need to do them. You mentioned the mold in the locker room carpets. Is that going to be a priority? Because I think the molding, which could lead to other health hazards, should be probably a priority to get that done first over, some shade.
Right, and some of these are going to be done by our in-house staff, and some of them will be done by outside contractors. We do already have a bid to replace that carpeting,
Okay.
so we are looking to make that happen as soon as we possibly can. The slurry seal parking lots, we were hoping to have had those done behind City Hall. Last year, we did manage to get the alley portion of that because we had to zip it up and put it back down. We did that as a part of the other chip seal work that we did with the roads, just so that we could get a better price for that. This will be basically slurry sealing the rest of it. We again have a price for that, and I'm ready to move forward with that one as well. The growth management tile floor leveling is going to take some time for us, just to give you that floor is pretty uneven in that facility, and we're having a hard time finding somebody that will help us level and retile that area. The glass doors at courts, the ADA is a concern for many of the people that come to meet with the courts. And also the wooden doors also are not closing properly, so that's a security issue. So let me think what else we have here that is probably a priority on our list. The AC unit in the council chambers is a priority. As you can see tonight, we continue to have problems with that. We did change the one in the room back there. We're going to try and get this one done as soon as possible as well. And I believe we already have a price for that and ready to move forward. And I think the remainder of the items are kind of as we get to them. So we have about 3 or 4 that are on the priority list.
You said you already were doing bids and stuff for the locker room. Is it going to just replace with carpet, or are we looking at tile or something easy?
We're actually looking at, it's kind of a rubberized type product versus being the carpeting itself. But it'll be something that we can clean a lot better than the carpeting was done.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I'd look for a motion.
Motion to approve is read.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 17, consider approval to unfreeze $15,000 in the capital sales tax fund budget to purchase new computers for various departments and $30,000 to purchase new projectors and screens for the PD training room and council chambers. Who wanted that one pulled? Go ahead.
Are we talking about this screen and this projector?
That's correct. There's also a similar one in the room right behind us here.
And it's because it's not bright enough?
Lots of issues. Definitely brightness is one of them. It's also a 4:3 resolution, whereas all of our new computers, the laptops you connect to it, are a widescreen. So you have the bars, the black bars on the tops or the sides, depending on the how you connect it. So the new one will be a widescreen. The screen itself will be wider, and then the laptops, when you connect it, it'll show the full what's actually on the laptop.
And that's for $25,000?
The actual quote on there, I think, was like $26,000 and change. We put on there not to exceed $30,000. So if a few minor things come up, we can get those repaired while they're doing the installation.
Okay.
I think wasn't that long ago that you came and we purchased a lot of computers at one time. Now we're trying to do it, over periods of time so it doesn't hit the budget so hard.
That's correct. The $15,000 is for computers, so we replace them. And so instead of doing 50 in 1 year, we'll do like 10 to 15 every year to keep it, kind of spread out. And then the $30,000, as we just mentioned, was for the projectors and the screens, as well as some AV equipment that goes in the video room.
Okay, thank you.
I'm all for it. I have the hardest time seeing that screen when you put things on there. So, it's kind of pricey, but I think we need to upgrade. So.
Yeah, and this was here from when we built the building in #04, so we definitely got our use out of it. I would expect the new one to last at least another 10 years as well. So.
Okay. Nothing down here. All right. Nothing else. I'd look for a motion.
Motion to move is read. Approve is read.
Your second.
Second.
Motion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank
Item
you.
number 18. Consider approval to unfreeze $50,000 in the capital sales tax fund budget for demolition projects and $25,000 for community service projects for fiscal years 14-15 and 15-16. Mr. Miller, who wanted that one?
I did. I know I ask a lot of questions, and everyone's like, well, it's in your agenda, just read it. I could not find what the $25,000 community service project was, or even the demolition projects, although they kind of make sense, 50,000 to tear buildings down. I get that. But the 25 grand for community service projects, I'm for anything for the community, so I'm okay with that. I'm just curious of what exactly it is.
That's a very good question. I'm glad you're asking the question. A few years ago, the mayor and council wanted to do a community project as part of a Make a Difference Day, and I think we did some landscaping in front of the Hohokam RV Park along the right-of-way. We also went out to the entryway sign and had volunteers work on some landscaping improvements out there. And following that time, I think the council felt that it was appropriate to try to set aside some money every year to try to work on some beautification enhancements, especially along Arizona Boulevard. We've used that money to do the gabion baskets, the well casings. We have some ideas this year to continue that program, working with other property owners on enhancements on walls, just to clean up the look of the property as you're coming in especially. It's just to showcase our community a little bit better. One of the things I'd really like to do is we do have a new visitor center over at North School. I really would like to see us dress that entryway up a little bit. Right now it's just chain link and dirt. And I think I'd like to see us put in a pergola and a little bit of landscape area to really greet visitors that are coming to the community with a little nicer enhancement there. That's the $25,000 beautification fund. The other, the $50,000 primarily is used for building demolition projects. We've demolished a lot of them in town. Oftentimes when we take these projects down, we do lien the property in hopes that when this property sells, someday we'll recover the cost of the demolition. But you know, I think the council one time felt that that was a great investment to clean up the looks of the community. We have a building on Coolidge Avenue right now. It's been vacant and the roof's coming down and windows are all broken out. That particular building this year, if we do that demolition, would eat up about half of the funds that we have earmarked tonight. We use it for weed covered lots on a lot of the properties that we own, weed abatement and control, especially in the early spring with the spraying of weed, what they call it, pre-emergent. So that's how we use those monies.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rick, you said that we're using it on our own lots, so city staff is not doing.
You know, it takes a. You know, we talked about that in house. You know, the Parks and Recreation Department has more, but they're specialized mowers. They really rather not go in there on these lots that have a lot of debris and rock and mess up their mowers. They'd rather contract that out. So we do generally contract the cleanup of those lots that are a little more difficult to go in there and put our own equipment at risk because of the cost of that.
Didn't years ago the Public Works Department do that?
You know, I'd have to have Susanna address that question.
I think we've got some information coming up.
Yes, last year in the budget, the general fund is now funding a portion of an employee that is working on those lots. That employee is also being funded through the Streets Department, as well as through liquid waste in helping to clean up the city properties as well as some of the alley work. So right now we are doing that work on the city lots that we own that are vacant, that do not have buildings on them. Parks and Rec will do the cleanup and the weed control and the landscaping control on any building lot that has vegetation. So for the city, the Public Works Department is working on maintaining the property.
And that all that will do is make our dollars go further on demolition. So that's fine. That's great to hear that.
Well, I think nobody else has anything to say. I'm looking for a motion.
Motion to approve is read, sir.
Second.
So motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Item number 19, consider approval to unfreeze the capital sales tax fund for the purpose of purchasing a used bucket truck for the Public Works Department for an amount not to exceed $20,000.
Good evening, Mayor and Vice Mayor, council members. We currently have 2 bucket trucks in the city that we have purchased, you know, in the past that are old, and one of them currently is unrepairable. We do have to put an engine in it, and it's probably not as safe as some of the modern ones. We've gone out and looked in a couple areas to see if there are any surplus ones that we can go out and purchase. We think we can get a replacement for the truck that is not operable right now in the range of $15,000 to $20,000. We do not have one identified at this point in time, but we want to be able to be ready in case one comes open. And again, we utilize these bucket trucks from anything from repairing or putting the hanger sock up on the hanger out at the airport. We do our traffic signals that have the four-way stops, like down at Attaway and Coolidge Avenue. We use them to place the banners up, and when we do the banners on the boulevard, it does take both of the bucket trucks, and we're down to just one right now, making it very unsafe for our, for our Parks and Rec group to basically put that up. So we are in need of getting a replacement for that.
Because we bought one not long ago, right?
No, we did not.
Maybe we just talked about it?
Yeah, I think we talked about maybe
Okay.
needing
I
one.
just
We
wanted
were
to
able
refresh
to,
my memory.
and that was the larger one. We were able to replace the rams on it and replace the stabilizer bars on it. So we basically did not purchase another one. We were able to repair that one. But the smaller one is unrepairable at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Susanna, now, are you going to replace the engine in the old one, or just buy another one to replace the one that?
We're going to buy another one and probably put the other one up for surplus. We'll bring that back to you guys as a surplus vehicle.
Okay. And so you don't really have one that you've designated that you're going to buy? You're just going to start looking and try to get it within that price range, is that correct?
Yeah, well, we have found a couple that are out there, but because this is an unfreezed, we have to unfreeze this capital, we didn't want to move too far ahead without having that capital unfrozen. Now that it's unfrozen, once one comes up, we'll be able to go out there and get it purchased.
And when you purchase it, are you going to be able to inspect it and everything?
Absolutely. We usually run it and do all the things that are necessary, try to look at all of the mechanical records on it, et cetera, maintenance records on them.
Can you give me an update on what you do find and the mileage and everything on it for me, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Quick question, out of curiosity, what's the price difference between one we find at a surplus and maybe a brand new one? Are we talking 60, 80 grand difference, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe even more than that, depending on, some of these vehicles can run us at least $100,000, so.
I only ask because it seems like if we keep buying older used ones, every few years we're going to be talking about the same thing, so.
And if we were
sometimes
using
bite the
this,
bullet.
if we were using this all the time, it would make sense to maybe go look after a new one, but because we probably use this piece of equipment maybe only 15 or 20 times a year, it just doesn't make sense to go out there and buy a brand new one for that.
Yeah, the boom itself is probably going to be about $30,000 to $40,000, and the truck is going to be about another $40,000. So.
Some change, right? Awesome. Thank you, Susan.
Anybody
Thank
else?
you.
All right, hearing nothing, I'm looking for a motion.
Move to approve?
Second.
Okay, a motion to approve and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, business under regular items. Item number 25, consider approval of the capital improvement plan for FY 15-16.
Honorable Mayor and members of council, the capital improvement plan is just that. It's a plan. It's a 5-year plan. And when you look at some of those categories that are on there, there are some big wishes out there, years out. And basically those really large items just keep moving out to a further year. But the things that are in the 15-16 column of each of those capital improvement plans are actually budgeted in this year's budget. We talked about each of those projects as we went through the budget cycle. So those are budgeted in the current year, and the other 4 years, past that are things that we know we need but don't necessarily have the funds for. Are there any questions on any of those plans that you received?
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
On the solid waste, I have a quick question. I noticed that our garbage trucks break down often, and I didn't see a garbage truck on any of the list. And we're borrowing from other people.
Recently, we have not had a whole lot of breakdown, although I will have to say that on the heels of that, we just had one 2 weeks ago. But typically with the new diagnostics tools that we have in place and the new maintenance schedule that we have on our trucks, the fact that we're just running 2 versus 3, we are continuing to basically manage the maintenance on those vehicles and manage the cost for that. Actually, last year we had no breakdowns that lasted more than 2 hours last year. So We do believe that we need to get one in, and I think I need to look at this real quick, because
I might have missed it, but I looked.
17
yeah,
and
what you're going to
18,
see in 17-18, we
Yeah,
do have one
300,000.
scheduled in there. I obviously would like to get a newer one in, and we are currently, as you may not be aware, but we're currently looking into the different types of vehicles that are out there. One of the vehicles that we have on our fleet right now was a brand new model that had just hit the streets, and we're finding out we had all kinds of problems with that because, some of the mechanics of the hiccups that happen with new vehicles hadn't been worked out. So we are working pretty diligently with several agencies right now to understand what trucks they're basically looking to buy as well. So we're hoping that by the time we get to 17-18, we'll have a good feel for a good piece of equipment that's not going to have some of the same issues that some of our existing had early on.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I'm just, that's a couple years away.
Well, and I will tell you that right now, from a funding perspective, we are, with the changes that we made a year ago, we are only coming up with about $20,000 to $30,000 of extra money that is coming into the budget to spend on capital. So we do not have a lot going on there. I do think that we need to sit down probably with council and work with council to say, how do we really pay for this plan that you see in front of you over this 5-year standpoint, to say, what does that mean with rates? What does that mean with operations? We think we can do most of that in-house with you now, based off of what we've learned over the last 2 years with some of the changes. In addition to that would be really getting that landfill covered, and getting the money set aside for that, as well as going into a recycle program, where the expense on that recycle program is not only going to be just a change in how we do operations, but we've got a lot of cans that we'll have to basically provide folks if we're going to do that curbside. So that's a big expense, and that is on this 5-year plan.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah, and I would also add that the finance director probably wouldn't be crazy about another long-term loan. We have a lot of money already out there, and we need to pay something off before we buy something else.
Right. And in this case, I don't think we have any loans that are outstanding in solid waste right now. So,
But there's a lot more than
we're
solid
just catching
waste.
up with the $300,000 or $350,000, overages that we had in the last couple of years, and we're starting to make up for that. We were in deficit.
And I think we're doing pretty good. There for a while, every meeting we heard about garbage trucks being broke down everywhere. So I think it's going better than it was.
Yes, then I noticed in 16-19 or 18-19 you have $65,000, and the previous year you have $300,000, and then the following fiscal year you have $365,000. What does $65,000 buy on the garbage?
That's actually the payments.
Oh,
So
is
so the way that the capital improvement plan works is that first year is really the cost of that vehicle, and we do that as a loan, and then the next year we'll be basically paying that off on a yearly basis.
Okay, and then on the landfill, I know that you have it out in the next 5 years, $550,000.
Right.
Is there any money that's been assigned to the previous years?
We tried. We're not quite making as much headway on that as we would like to. Again, like I said, I would like to take this 5-year plan, sit down and say, how do we actually fund this over the next 5 years, and bring that back to you and say, this is how we would basically go into some loan processes to get the equipment purchased, to get that landfill covered. There is some opportunities at this point in time where we've got some more material that we might be able to bring in on that landfill, which would reduce that $500,000. So we're continuing to work on that as well.
Wasn't the cost of it like over $1 million though?
Yeah. But we have to, in order for us to fill it at this point in time, we have to come up with $150,000 for the liner. Once we lay the liner down, I need to be able to put the 2 to 3 foot of fill on top of it. And so we are at a point right now where we either are going to have to jump in or continue to just do what we're doing right now.
And I'm glad that it's set aside, because it's a headache that we got to take care of. I mean, we got to get an aspirin to get rid of the headache.
Right.
So,
Extra strength.
thank you.
Right?
Just, Suzanne, thank you, Mayor. Along the same lines, I mean, we've been trying to close that landfill as long as I remember. And we've been putting money on it. So we're at the stage now where we put the liner in and then a couple feet of soil and then we can close it.
Yes. And I'm going to just throw this out here so that you guys kind of understand that. We do need to build some detention basins in town for some of the drainage issues that are happening up north. The drainage study that has come through on that process has indicated that we will have to be digging in some holes to basically get some more water held so that it's not in people's yards and on the streets the way it is right now. We're hoping to take that material and start producing some of that fill, which will reduce that cost because, you know, we're not having to pay for that fill. You know, we're just hauling it with our own equipment once we dig those basins. So.
Yeah, because I know Avondale, I used to do some contract inspections, and they took an old landfill and then got some grants and actually used it for a park. And so that helped pay for part of that closure. And so they just could only go down so far, and the lights actually were big blocks of concrete that floated on top. They really didn't float, but they were set up there.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you looked at it, the only difference was it was elevated a little bit in the surrounding soil. It was beautiful. So,
Right.
I mean, I don't know if at one point we talked about partnering up with who was the developer that was going to do that whole area, and
Right.
maybe create some open space. And
That was prior to my coming on board,
Yeah.
but yes, once the developments come in, that was one of the opportunities that we had. I know also that we do have quite a big amount of material sitting down on Picacho Crossings right now that someday that developer's going to have to move out of there in order to build houses as well. So I think there's fill material available for us, and any of that we can get put over there is going to be beneficial. The important thing is can we time it properly to get that lining down and then start building on top of that lining. And so that's kind of that's the process we're working on right now. If we could get a grant to turn it into a park, that would be great too. It's just not identified as that right now. So,
well, as we go forward and things start growing again, through a development agreement, we can require them to bring the fill from construction into that site and try to save some money.
correct.
Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we keep working on all those innovative ideas. Thank you for them.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks. Anything down here?
No, sir.
Okay. In that case, we're going to need a motion.
Sir, I make a motion to approve item 25 is read.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item number 26. Consider approval of the sole preferred vendors list. For purchasing services or products when there is only one vendor that provides a specific service or product, or where it is in the best interest of the city not to seek bids.
Yes.
You know I don't like this list.
I know you
Go
don't.
ahead.
Honorable Mayor and members of council, there were a few years back, we would decide to do a preferred vendor or a sole vendor for different items, and we would just simply note that on the check request or the purchase order. When the auditors came in and they said, if you're going to do sole or preferred vendors, we would prefer that you have a list and that you have council revisit that list at least once per year. So that's what we're doing. It is a live list. All of those that you see, there's one for admin. There are 2 lists for the police department and 1 for public works. And when you look at the dates on those lists, basically what it shows you is that the original list started in February 11th of 2008, and any additions or deletions from that list are simply noted to the left-hand side in red or in blue. So if you don't see any notations in red or blue, we've been using that preferred or sole vendor since 2008. And each of the departments will answer questions that you have on each individual list.
Okay, any questions down here? Councilmember Lewis?
If Ms. Muriel, do you have any questions? Yeah. A few questions. First question is there's a lot of things on this list. I really didn't get a chance to look at every single one, but there's a couple, or at least one that I want to ask about. But before I do, is this list, is it something, and maybe you even know, sir, that we can have an executive session on, so as a council we can look at this list together and decide what we do and do not like about it, maybe tweak it other than the 5 minutes we have up here? Or is this not executive session worthy?
It depends, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lewis, it would depend on what type of questions you'd ask. I mean, if there were legal questions about the list and why we have it and how you get on, how you don't get on, we could definitely, in an executive session, have an executive session about those issues. I mean, at this point, since we're in an open meeting right now, you can ask directors, how certain people got on, why are they still on, if you have other questions about them that you think would be better for an executive session, we can table this, but we'd have to talk legal issues in the executive session.
Some of the go through every single vendor is going to take way too long. Very will be here till tomorrow morning, so I'm not going to put anybody through that. But one concern I do have is with some of these vendors, I would like to know, one, the process, because I would want to avoid having someone on this list just because they're my buddy.
And I think, Councilmember, I think that's a very fair question. I think you can ask the department directors, how do you get on this list? I mean, how do you become a sole vendor? Because I think, I've sat here a couple times, you'll see there's some here that they're the only ones that do it. And like I'm looking at Herb's phone service, and he's established the service, I think, that the city uses. He's done all our installs. I think he knows our phone system better than anybody. He's local, and I don't want to speak for any director, but I think that's kind of how he's on the list.
He's actually listed as a preferred vendor.
Right.
I know there's a few, like for the police department, you have Taser and Proforce. They're the only ones who offer that.
Absolutely. That's how they get on
obviously,
there.
if you're the only person, then you're the only person.
Right.
But I know not everybody on the list is the only person who provides these things. So I would just want more time, maybe as a council, to go through it and address maybe concerns we have with you in an executive type session. That's just my, as far as that goes, that's my question, because I'm not sure exactly how half these people are on the list and why. But like I said, we're going to be way too long if we go through one by one, and I don't really want to do that tonight.
And I know this is the first time this list has come to you. I'm trying to think, the auditors want council to look at it, I think, once a year and approve it. I don't think that has to be tonight.
No, the last time we actually had them approve it was November of last year.
Okay.
So
we're
it's
still
just
a few months from a
coming
year
up.
mark.
Mhm.
Okay. My second question is kind of irrelevant, I guess, but on the preferred vendor, we have Casa Grande Regional Medical Center. I'm not sure if it's under, it says administration on the top of the list. I'm not sure if it's PD or just basic admin. Did we use them for collection of our drug and alcohol testing?
Mm-hmm.
And this was approved in 2008, but since then we have a closer hospital, I think, that could provide this service. So have we talked to them? Have we, and this again plays into my concern with this list to begin with.
Right.
Because they're closer, probably they could be faster. We don't know because we haven't talked to them, I think.
We probably haven't, and there's a lot of things to consider when you're doing drug and alcohol testing, because first of all, the reason we have the hospital on there is because of the after hours, the after 5 o'clock, and we do have drivers on until 8 o'clock, I believe, in the evening, so we have to have a facility that's open late enough for them
Right.
to do that. We have not checked, I don't believe that we've actually.
Honorable
Yeah,
Mayor
Justin
and
probably has-
Council, if I could just share, myself and Rachel and I want to say maybe Bob, we did meet with representatives from Florence Anthem, which is in near or close to our community. At that time, they were going through some issues at the hospital. I don't want to get into that, but they were going to work up a contract. They came to talk to us about maybe our workers' comp injuries going over to the hospital. That would be their initial visit instead of going to primaries and going to different facilities. They came to us with different proposals, but have never been able to follow up with getting the contract to us so that we can review. They had some issues going on, so therefore it never came through. It never followed.
How long ago was this?
Probably over a year ago.
Okay, because I know there's been a lot of issues settled there.
Yeah, and it could be
They
less
have
than
some new news coming out of that place as well, as far as what's going on with
Correct.
them.
I've heard bits
which
and
is
pieces.
beneficial to their process. So with that being, those meetings and issues being a year old, I think at least we owe it to ourselves to open up those conversations again.
Most definitely.
Yeah,
And
so-
we can look into that.
I know that there are certifications that there are individuals that do the testing and whatnot have to have two for the transit program, and I don't know if Jill would like to speak on that, because there are different things different aspects of that particular type of contract, other than just are they available or how close are they?
Yeah, to my knowledge, the lab at Anthem is pretty similar to the lab at Castro Grande. There's the things that we would need would be pretty similar.
Yeah.
Because we're not doing DNA testing, so it will be good.
Mayor Thompson, Councilmember Lewis, from the last information, they were here about 3 or 4 months ago was when Florence Anthem came in talking about this one, and they did not have the FTA approval for the drug testing. So this is administration for the city as a whole. It can be used by any department in the city. We also have new direction from the Arizona Department of Transportation, Federal Transit Administration, and we'll need to double check how much we're paying for the transit program for our pre-employment screening, as well as our random screening on our CDL drivers. Public Works CDL drivers also have to go through random screening to keep their license. For the transit side, it must be FTA approved collection facility, so it's not just the lab, it's the collection process, and do they have monitors, I hate to put it that way, to watch somebody when they're leaving their specimen, to go through. The only group that historically has been approved and kept that certification going is the Banner Casa Grande Regional Medical Center now, that type of thing. But we also could possibly be hitting an expenditure threshold. If we spend over $3,000 on this type of monitoring, we have to get quotes. So it may be removed from the transit perspective, where we just have to get quotes every single year, and it would not be on approved vendors list. So we're pulling those numbers to see what that dollar amount a year is for transit, so that we're complying with the federal overlay statutes. But we'll continue to speak with Florence on their certifications and if they have the FTA approval. It's quite extensive, the approval that they have to collect for the CDL licenses.
Thank you, Joe. I myself, over the years, have had a problem with this particular list, not just the fact we have one. I think a lot of this ought to go out for bid. But in saying that, I've been where Councilmember Lewis is, and I've made the same arguments. And I also realize, though, that in the business of government, sometimes we have to get things done, and they can't always wait for a meeting. So as I look through this, there's some on there that I know why they're on there, and there's some that, you know, you're just not going to find things anywhere else. But I think that if anybody on this council or myself has a problem with any of these, we should go talk to the purchasing, to Lisa, or we should ask the department head and find out. I don't think that this list is written in stone. And if we can always put it on an agenda, on an agenda item on another council meeting, if that person does their investigation and has an issue. I don't really see a need to have an executive session over a vendor's list. But I do think that if a council member has a problem with one of these for a good reason, then they need to bring it back before the rest of the council, and I'd be willing to look at it. I just think that a lot of times, you know, government moves slow enough as it is. If you've got to wait, if you've got something to do in your department head, and you've got to wait for us to approve a whole bunch of things, especially like we were just gone for a meeting, it can, you know, things just don't get done sometimes. So I would suggest that what we do is we look through this, and if we have any items on here or any vendors that we have issues with, that we discuss it with the appropriate people out here in the audience or Mr. Flatley, and then we go from there. We can do that, right, Dennis?
Right, Mr. Mayor, yes, absolutely, you can do that. And I think just what you said is true. I think the list is kind of alive. I mean, you can, if Florence Anthem was able to get that qualification by December and council wanted to bring it back and to add them at that time, they can do that. There's no problem. I think from the auditor's perspective, they just want to make sure that on a yearly basis, the council reviews it and approves the list.
Thank you, Dennis. Vice Mayor.
Lisa, just for the record, there are other city governments that do this, correct?
I don't know if they do a specific list like we do. This list was requested by our auditors if we're going to not go out and do bids on particular things. For instance, the Herb's phone service was brought up. He's the one that installed our phone system. He's the one that's running the lines to connect our liquid waste department and whatnot. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Yes, there are plenty of vendors that do that type of work, but you need to be consistent with who's running your wires and who's putting in your systems, because they don't always work together well if you're using different vendors. That's why he's on that list, and we've put a small narrative, sort of a short narrative, out to the side of each of the vendors explaining why those have been chosen. Each time the department directors come forward with someone to add to the list, they can only be a sole vendor if indeed they really are the only one in the U.S. that you can get that particular thing from. That's a sole vendor. The preferred vendors are ones like Herb's phone service and ones that it makes sense. I believe that another one is people that do the maintenance on some of our equipment and whatnot. It doesn't make sense to purchase your equipment from one vendor and have someone else doing the maintenance, so therefore we use those. I think if you look out to the right on each one of these things, we're very careful not to put them on this list unless it makes total sense to put that vendor on here. I'm constantly urging department directors to go out and do their bids, when required. Right now it's anything over 5,000 requires bids. Anything over 25,000 has to come back to council, or if it has an agreement, it comes back to council. So we could put anyone on this list that we want, but anything over 25,000 still comes back to council. Anything that is budgeted under our capital, as you saw all of the items tonight for your approval to have those unfrozen. Anything on the capital list over 10,000, those monies are frozen unless you unfroze those tonight in a lump sum or for a particular item. So even though they're on this list, doesn't mean that it automatically, goes by and council doesn't see it again. But for things less than 25,000, if you've approved this list, that vendor could be utilized without us seeking bids.
Back in the hard times, harder than the ones we're having now, didn't we have the limit of 10,000?
For that came to council, yes. We changed that.
So we jumped, I remember when we jumped it up to 25.
Right. And that's part of our purchasing policy, and should council decide, you could always revisit that. At that time, it was we had to get bids on anything over 1,000. Well, technically everything's over $1,000 pretty much, and so we were literally getting 3 verbal bids on pretty much everything. So we looked at kind of what some of the other cities were doing across the board, and that's when we upped it to 5,000 for verbals, 10,000 for written bids, and then anything over 25 requires a sealed advertised bid unless council waives that.
Well, I know we did pretty good on that bid with the loan with the interest rates not that long ago.
Right.
So, I mean, that's why I'm a big believer in bidding and stuff, but I also think that I want to see the local people, and there are local businesses on this list. So.
And we do like to certainly get bids whenever possible from our local vendors. I've never put one of the banks on here as being our preferred vendor. Even though we bank with one of them here in town, we always try to get as many bids as we can on interest rates.
Okay. Thank you. Anything, Councilmember Lopez?
Mayor, thank you. And on these, staff will have an estimated amount it should cost in the file.
Right.
So, I mean, it's like if you go out with the sole source, you should have something that says this is a typical price out there. You may have to make some calls.
Right.
But just to assure the public that once you bid something and you put a wire in, now it's forever. It's yours forever for the life of the building. I mean,
exactly.
No matter what the cost is, and that's not the case.
Right.
You compare the cost to what's reasonable out. There's a lot of things out there. The means data, construction books that tell you so you can estimate.
Right.
At least so you'll have that.
And of course, anything we're using federal funds on is going to require bids regardless of what we have on our preferred vendor list.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I do.
Oh.
I would just like to say I'm not convinced yet. I don't see any system of accountability. In a free market system, there is your accountability. when you get a bid here, a bid there, and you want to beat that bid. But if you get on a list, you could get on a good old boy list. You scratch my back, I scratch yours, and that is the accountability in government. That's the fear, especially in a small town. I remain unconvinced. I'd love to have that executive session.
Okay. Anybody else?
By the way, I love the idea of keeping it local, and that's not, I know nothing as far as anybody doing anything below board at all. I'm just saying, looking at the big picture, that's just one of the things that government needs to deal with.
Well, not necessarily the lowest bidder is always the best product or the best service also. And so if you have people on this preferred list that you know you've done business with over for 10 or 15 years, that the price is competitive, because all you got to do is kind of look at it. But they give you good service and a good product, then, you know, just like you said, the government moves slow enough. And to have an executive session to go over a bidders list, I think it's a waste of time for the council and also for the city staff. They got to have some leeway, and if you don't trust the staff to do their job, then maybe we need to look at the different staff.
Okay. Nothing else?
No, Mayor. If there's nothing else to be said, no. I'm going to make a motion. I'm not going to make a motion for an executive session. However, I do make a motion for item 27, ordinance number 1511, to table it. So, 26. I'm sorry. 26. Item 26 is read. I want to not motion to approve as read, but motion to table it so that some of us have more time to do some work on this and maybe take it to executive session at some point, but for now, at least table it.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I guess we probably, do you want to have a show of hands, or do we need to vote on this?
However you want to, Mr.
However
Mayor.
you want to do it, Mayor.
All right. Then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Yep. Nay.
Okay. Okay, that one failed. Now we need another motion.
Now you need another motion.
Okay. Is there another motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move we approve the sole preferred vendors list with the understanding that we can revisit this at any time.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. The ayes have it. Item 27.
Thank
Ordinance
you.
number 15-11. An ordinance of the City of Coolidge, Arizona, amending the Coolidge zoning ordinance by amending section 1002 Edward of the City of Coolidge zoning code and deleting section 1301 Dog of the City of Coolidge zoning code to define and permit the parking of recreational vehicles in residential areas and providing the severability and effective date thereof. Mr. Miller.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, approximately 3 months ago, we had a citizen come in and express some concern about the way the city zoning code was written with respect to the parking of recreational vehicles in residential areas. We did a presentation, kind of explained to the mayor and council why the code is written the way it is. And to kind of refresh your memory, the way the code is currently crafted is pretty limiting. It basically allows one recreational vehicle on a single-family lot that has a dwelling on it, not on a vacant lot, and the recreational vehicle must be parked in the rear yard of the home on a paved or concrete surface. That's the way the current code reads, no exceptions. As you know, we've kind of showed some pictures. There's lots of RVs around town not in compliance, and when we go out and do code enforcement based on a complaint, the frequent answer we get from the individual that we're writing a citation to is, well, I'll comply when everybody else does. So we kind of looked back at the code. You think your direction was for us to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission to hold a public hearing and get some feedback from the commission members on the code, and they've done just that. We did hold a public hearing, and what we have done, or what the Planning Commission did through staff review and with their recommendation, we provided a little more flexibility in the code. And what we're doing, we would be deleting the existing code that basically provides the limitations that I just described to you, And we're making it very black and white, where there's really very little room for interpretation on the part of a staff person when they go out there, or on the part of the property owner when it comes to the compliance with this section of the code. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended for your approval tonight a code amendment that's listed in your staff report, but basically the code amendment would provide the following rules for parking recreational vehicles in residential neighborhoods. Number one, recreational vehicles must be parked behind the minimum front yard setback line. To explain that a little better for you, the way the code currently is written, it has to be in the rear yard, period. Every zoning district in a residential area has a minimum front yard setback, and that typically is 20 feet from the front property line. Many homes in this city are set back well beyond 20 feet. They may have a setback of 30 and 40 feet. This rule, as applied, would allow you to park it in the front yard as long as you're not parking that recreational vehicle within the front 20 feet setback requirement of the single-family lot. Again, that is to kind of keep that look as you're looking down the street of having recreational vehicles blocking the view sheds from the surrounding neighbors, or blocking driveways as people are backing out of their driveways. Number two, one recreational vehicle shall be allowed per 5,000 square feet of lot area. Right now, only one allowed. If you have a larger lot, let's say you have a 15,000 square foot lot, you can park 3. 10,000 square foot, you can park 2. 5,000 square foot, you can park 1. So we kind of provided some, a range. You know, the bigger the lot, the more things you can put on your lot. We shouldn't be punitive. If you have a very large lot, say in a rural area, like acre and a half, why should you be limited to just one RV? Under the current rules, that would be applicable. Number three, recreational vehicles may not be parked upon a lot without a principal structure. So we're still not allowing under the code for someone to park a recreational vehicle on a vacant lot in any residential neighborhood. What that would promote, if that were left in there, people would go out and buy a cheap lot for a couple $1,000s, and they'd use it to store not only RVs, but maybe a tractor, maybe other equipment. And then you have residential areas that are not designed for what their intended purpose was. They become residential locations for storage yards rather than residential locations for homes. And so the commission felt that was important that restriction be there, that you park recreational vehicles on a lot with a principal dwelling unit on the lot. If you have a lot that's vacant and a principal building next door, and they're two separate lots, but you own them both, if you want to combine the lots into one property, then you could park it on that vacant lot, but because it's one lot, if you combine them. And that came up in our discussion. Number four, recreational vehicles must be licensed and operable. You know, I can show you around town examples where many of these RVs become permanent fixtures to the land. They end up with flat tires, they end up rusting with broken windows, spare parts, and they become a real eyesore. They become a storage shed in many cases for people to just store their stuff in. And I think the commission felt that they should be licensed and operable if you're going to have a recreational vehicle. Number five, the last of the conditions, is that recreational vehicles may not be occupied outside of designated RV mobile home park areas. If you start allowing people to occupy recreational vehicles in the city, you have lots of concerns there. Generators running at night, keeping the residents next door awake. What do you do with the gray water? What do you do with the solid, the black water in these RVs? We have been chasing around just the last few days a couple of individuals that are in the town, and they're camping all over town. We're running them from one spot to the next. They're camping in neighborhoods. Residents will call and say, hey, we don't even know whose RV this is. It's parked on the street, blocking our sidewalks. It goes over, they're parking in the McDonald's parking lot. They're parking over at Walmart. These are kind of campers that really need to be in the designated recreational vehicle parks where they can be accommodated. And so that's the last condition. We believe the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend for this ordinance revision. They believe it provides some flexibility over the current code, but yet still preserves the code in a manner shouldn't be detrimental to the neighborhoods if we implement it this way. Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I saw Mr. Fitzgibbons pulling in an RV tonight. Vice Mayor.
Rick, the one RV per 5,000 square feet of lot area, are we going to require that to be fenced?
No, there's no fencing requirements on this.
Because I've received complaints of multiple RVs on people's property, and it's beginning to look junky. And so, I mean,
Yeah, the
I would be in
commission-
favor of that if we require them to have a fencing, but,
Yeah, there's no, the way the ordinance was crafted, there's no requirement for it to be behind a fence or a screen wall. If they're behind on this property, parked in the manner with within these rules, operable, licensed, the commission didn't feel that the fence was really necessary. But it's a point well taken. Some communities do require them to be in the rear yard behind a fence.
Yes, I have quite a lot. There's a reason why I said I wasn't going to keep us here all night for the vendor list, because I have a lot to say about this, so I apologize ahead of time. I have many questions, but first I'm going to start with, I do want to state, because I know it'll be stated after I have to say what I have to say, is I do agree that as a city we do need to have some codes and restrictions for the betterment of the city. 100% get that. But I do have issues with this code, and it seems like, and you mentioned earlier that we've revisited the code to make it friendlier to those who are complaining that they're getting tickets. But it seems like the people, so the residents that came in when we had this issue come up months ago, they're still in violation regardless. So their concerns kind of, don't really get dealt with. I watched the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that dealt with this. It was their last meeting, I believe, where they approved this to come in. So I have some concerns with things that were done that I want to bring up. There was two, I believe they were sisters, who brought up an address because, like we're doing now, we're telling people what they can't do, what they're asking for options. What can we do? I don't feel it's our place to tell people, well, your only option is to go spend more money. That's not appropriate, in my opinion. What she was told, because she went through a divorce, so she owns property. She moved to what people call New Coolidge, the newer Heartland Ranch area, and their HOA doesn't allow anything, pretty much. You're a prisoner in your home, and that's it. So her lot that she had in town, she removed a trailer that was on there, a trailer home that was being used, vandalized, and people were breaking in there and doing illegal activity. She removed it to keep negative activity off her lot, and then she parked her RV, and her sister parked her RV on there. She's being told she can't. So she asks the commission, what are my options? She's told by Mr. Bolin, and you can go back and watch the video, you were there, but you can go back and watch the video for anybody who didn't see it, that she can give her lot to her neighbor, because then his lot will be bigger and they could both park their RVs there. Good idea, right? But as any form of city government commission, is it really our place? And Mr. Fitzgibbons could probably chime in on this. To tell somebody your option is give your lot to your neighbor and then you could park it there, because at some point civil issues happen. Something may happen with those neighbors. She may want her property back. She said, well, you gave it to me. Well, the city told me to do it. And now the city is involved in litigation that we really should not and do not need to be involved with. So I don't agree that that's an option to tell citizens when they're asking you, what can I do? Now, if they come up on their own and want to sell their property, but there is no mention of, hey, sell your property. She was told, give it to your neighbor. This almost a direct quote was, give it to your neighbor. And then you could talk to him and park it on his property, because now it's $10,000. Or if you have $15,000, because some lots are bigger than 5, you could park 3 or 4 or 5, whatever you want to do. So I take issue with that, because that's not a viable option. And I think if we're going to apply restrictions, we do need to provide some options. And I believe there's 3 places in town you could park your RV. One maybe it's $40, the other one's 3, 4, 5 times that. And I don't think it's our place to put that kind of financial constraint on somebody because they want to park an RV somewhere that's really not causing problems. And a lot of people think, another thing that was said is, and I believe this came from you, Mr. Miller, we don't want to invite people just to come into our town and put their RVs on our lots. We don't want to become that type of city. A good portion of our city are the type of people who use RVs and have them on their lots. They're already here. That's who we are. So to say we don't want that to come in, or do we want to kick out our citizens? Because that's who we are. We're not, Donald Trump's not moving the city of Coolidge. He's not. We are who we are. We own what we own. We have hunters, fishermen here. We allow someone to have junky boats on their property because that's not considered a recreational vehicle, but a boat can get you further than a pull-along trailer. You can't drive that anywhere, but a boat gets you point A to point B on the waterway, which is a vehicle. So I think our definition of recreational vehicle needs to change regardless of what the state determines as recreational vehicles. I think we do have the authority for our codes to determine what we consider a vehicle and not a vehicle. And I know I'm talking a lot just because I have a lot I want to make sure I get to say and not get cut off. So I think, and there's something, we did this earlier in the meeting. We had the youth council here. They took their oath. We did the same thing where we promised to protect and uphold the Constitution. But right now we're violating it. Point blank, the Constitution protects people's personal property and they could do what they wish with it. And the fact that we're restricting them is a direct violation of it. And if you don't believe, go read it. And I guess black and white, since, we did a good job of putting this on black and white, it's there. So in my opinion, we could be a little bit more helpful to the citizens and maybe give them more options than what we're giving them, because I don't think we are doing that, because everyone that came in and complained, they're still going to be in violation. Like, we really did nothing to help them. And that's what we're here to do. Because correct me if I'm wrong, the citizens are why we're here. Go ahead.
Is that Mr. Mayor, may I respond?
Sure, go ahead.
First of all, thank you. And I this issue was not taken lightly when we went to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the two sisters they were really the only ones that were there at the meeting that raised a concern at the public hearing. And the story that you related isn't necessarily all the right story. I believe these sisters, or one of the sisters, was married. They owned a house with a vacant lot next door. And in the settlement of their divorce, she got the vacant lot. He got the house. She wanted to park her RVs on this vacant lot. She retained it for that purpose. And she was upset that she couldn't use her vacant lot to store her RVs on it. In our communications with her, we did say the ordinance is pretty restrictive in that regard because we don't want vacant lots to be storage lots in the community. We're not trying to pick on one individual. When we put these codes together, it is for everybody. And there are a number of vacant lots in this community where people can park recreational vehicles on there for a few. They can go out and buy a lot for a few $1,000 and then make it a storage yard for a recreational vehicle. I don't think that was the image that the Planning and Zoning Commission necessarily wanted to see in a neighborhood where we're trying to encourage infill and housing on these vacant lots rather than storage areas. I think that was the real concern that the Planning Commission had. We did try to find a solution for the sisters. Now, you may not agree with the solution, but we thought, you don't have to, you can find a friend to park your RV on their lot. If you can find an owner or a friend or a relative that's not in an HOA, and by the way, most HOAs restrict the parking of these recreational vehicles, and that's when you look at this community, the majority of the residential areas are impacted by those HOA rules. Our code really is a similar rule for the areas that are outside of the HOAs. Boats are not considered a recreational vehicle. If you want us to consider boats as a recreational vehicle, you're going to make it even more restrictive. So you're going to be violating more people's rights, I think, with regard to making that an issue. The commission felt that boats shouldn't be of the same standard as the big motorhomes or Class C motorhomes. They felt that boats should be an exception, and we shouldn't be lumping that into a recreational vehicle category. The Constitution. I believe in property rights in the Constitution. And I think I said before that planning and zoning in itself was established because zoning really is there to protect property owners from the adverse impacts that a neighbor might create for them. If you look at we the people here, it talks about the blessings of life, liberty, but also to ensure the general welfare, to promote, ensure the general welfare. I can show you examples. I was out last week looking at lots of code violations in this town where the properties are a serious problem for adjoining property owners. And I think government does have a role in making sure that people keep their properties in a manner that isn't going to devalue or detract from their values. You know, I think that there's a definite role. The City of Euclid versus the Amber Realty Company was a landmark zoning decision that said your right to use your property ceases when it begins to infringe on somebody else's right to use theirs. And that's what zoning is all about. Zoning establishes the use of property. We restrict uses in zoning. That's just a standard that we do every day. People call me and say they want to put 2 houses on one lot. They have to have a certain amount of lot area to do that. They have to have setbacks. And all those are to ensure and preserve the peace and morals of the community and the general welfare and safety. So the commission did take a look at these. You know, I think they were really trying to find a way to provide a little more flexibility. We weren't going to be making everybody happy. And I know that when those 2 sisters left that night, we knew that they weren't going to be happy. I knew when we left that night that the people that complained originally about the ordinance weren't going to be satisfied with the outcome of the ordinance. When you have a property owner that has 6 or 7 recreational vehicles on their lot, it looks like a recreational vehicle storage area. He's fixing some of them. He's storing them for his family members who can't keep them in an HOA. And so the standards have been more flexible with this code, but it's not going to fix everybody's issues and protect everybody's right. There's no doubt about that. That's just an issue that you have to decide on.
Yeah. I have more whenever you're done. Go ahead, but I do have more.
Well, you know, we're telling the 2 sisters that they can't park their RVs there on a vacant lot, but we're allowing somebody to park multiple RVs on a lot of, you know, an RV for every 5,000 square feet. To me, that doesn't make sense. Why are we doing that? What's the purpose of that?
Well, right now, keep in mind, it's 1 RV on any lot, regardless of size. You have a 5-acre lot, you can have 1 RV on it. You have a 5,000-acre lot, you can have 1 RV on it. The commission felt, as we look at this, we should probably provide some flexibility in allowing additional RVs on the lot if you have a larger lot to accommodate it. You know, we don't want people to park their RVs all over their backyard and fill the whole yard with RVs. But 1 per 5,000, if you look at the footprint of a typical single-family home and you look at the footprint of an RV, you'll still have enough play area and open space around your home. But you start putting 3 and 4 RVs on a single-family lot of 5,000 square foot, you're going to have it'll be congested. So I think they were looking at a standard to grant more flexibility in allowing more RVs if you had a bigger lot. Hopefully that answers your question.
You said earlier that the landmark case that you mentioned that says the right to use your property as you wish ceases when it interferes with someone else's right to their property. So how is an RV and a pop-up camper in my backyard keeping my neighbor from using his property?
It's not. If you have an RV and a pop-up camper on a lot that's big enough, you know.
That's the thing. It's
big
per
enough.
the regulation.
Yeah, if it's big enough.
Some people have the bigger trailer for when they go out with their family. Some people have the small pop-ups when they go on their own. You know, another issue is, and I'm sure this is going to get contested, is Walmart allows RVs on their lots and people sleep in them overnight. So that's okay?
No, it's not.
So
if
we're
you
gonna
look at
fine
the last condition that I read this evening, it says no overnight. You may not be occupied in any area.
I understand that. When's the last time we fined Walmart for having RVs in their parking lot?
Well, I talked to McDonald's about the ones parked in their RV in their parking lot. They told us to get them off They're taking away the customer parking. I know it went over to Walmart. It had a for sale sign in it. It was off. I'd be happy to go in there and do that more, to have Walmart ask that they be removed. I know some Walmarts post on the parking lot, no overnight camping.
Yeah, well, I know
And the reason
majority
they
of
don't
Walmarts,
allow
that's
the
a big
overnight
thing they
camping is
allow.
oftentimes the next day, when these RVs leave early in the morning, they're dumping their gray water. Some of these people are disrespectful. They'll dump their black water in the parking lot. They'll dump their trash there, and they're gone. And you don't know where they went, but they just dumped in the parking lot.
Something I do agree that you said is we do have a lot of property in our city that, for lack of better words, looks terrible.
Yes.
It seems the RV, and my issue too, is spending so much time on the RV issue, and it came about because all of a sudden it started getting enforced pretty heavily. That's why the first group of people came to complain. I hate to fathom that the RV is such that big of an issue with what we have in town. Because if we go on a drive in 10 minutes, we're going to find millions of issues that we could focus more time on than an RV. And the boat issue is there are a lot of out-of-commission boats and some properties here in town that look a lot worse than a functional RV in someone's property. So I don't agree with you saying, well, it's not that big of an issue. We have a lot of boats for what it's kind of odd because we don't really have a lake right next to us. We have a lot of boats on property. They're just sitting there. They're old. They're got pieces of vehicles sitting in them. We have old cars on property the same way. And I could tell I'm getting the looks that I'm talking too much, so I'll end it with that. But I don't support this, and I'm not going to support this. But it's going to pass, so there's no point.
Councilmember Lewis, when we go out and look at those and make a note that those RVs are typically in violation of the code, that's not the only code violation we're noting on that property. Frequently, there's weeds, there's trash, there's abandoned vehicles or inoperable vehicles. There's a multitude of things that are cited whenever they go out and cite these. And we have this conversation pretty much weekly at our staff meeting about how we're going to do code enforcement in this town to make the town look a little better. We need to do that in our neighborhoods. We need property owners to do that. I'd rather not have to do it through a code enforcement standpoint. I'd rather have property owners do it for themselves. And I'd rather have neighbors helping neighbors to clean up these lots. But it is a real problem, and we need to get a better handle on it.
Have we thought of a permit system for the RVs in the lots? And the requirement for maintaining your permit is making sure if you say you have 2 RVs in your backyard, keeping them cleared, that a certain feet of surrounding area clear of weeds, maybe a water source in the backyard in case something's on fire, because I know that was an issue the last time. They're combustible. Well, we park cars in our driveway that run all day. They're hotter than an RV. You know, we don't have restrictions on that.
The only problem with permits is it's another level of bureaucracy and another level of enforcement and oversight. I think we're just trying to write a code that's very simple to interpret and to go out there. If you know the rules, these are the rules, follow them, and we leave you alone on the RVs.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, it's a, the issue of property rights. We're a very strong property rights state, but it's just that when it impacts the neighbor, that's where the issue is. And back in the day, I was the chief zoning inspector for the county, and even out there, they had certain rules because people would just turn their yard into just bring in junk cars, and you'd have a brand new house that was just built there. Somebody put their whole livelihood into it, and the neighbor next door, before the codes were here, would build a house out of pallets, and they'd say, "Why do you let them do that? I put my life savings into this house. It's beautiful." And I said, "We don't have codes to stop it, and so until the board of supervisors passed it, then we could do something about it." So I mean, there's certainly, if you don't enforce, your town, your city, or your area will go, the way you have it looking. Where somebody mentioned that we were talking about our city, and I love Coolidge, but they were saying, well, it's Coolidge. What do you expect? And that's a terrible thing for other people from outside to say about us. It's a matter of pride, but I think the Planning and Zoning Commission tried to find a middle ground. It sounds like they're volunteers, and they're trying to find something that's fair. And I know this isn't as strict as some in the valley. It's certainly not as strict as the HOA. I mean, yeah, I mean, they're after me all the time. So, if you're in an oil spot. So, anyway, I think they did an admirable job of trying to come up with something. I don't think everybody's going to be happy. They never are with zoning ordinances. They're difficult. But yeah, I mean, certainly, property rights are number one. But at the same time, there has to be some rules. I did get emails from people when we started the discussion that didn't like the fact that we may allow RVs everywhere. I got those kind of responses too. So I think there's some that are for them and some against. So, thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't in favor of changing it the way it was. I mean, the way it was before, I wasn't in favor of rezoning it. I've lived in this town for 34 years, and I've got 2 houses that I own in this town. I've got an investment in this town. My kids go to school here. My daughter came back from graduating and is going to be teaching school here. And I think it has to do with Coolidge pride. The high school and everything, everybody around, that's a big thing, is Coolidge pride. And I think if each and every homeowner took pride in their property and in the city of Coolidge, we would be a lot better place. To see it, when I first moved in here in 1980, to see it now and the way it looked a lot better in the 80s. And the reason why is you have more population now. And when you have more population, you have more problems. And you've got to adjust. I mean, as times change, you've got to change with the times. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting here and we're going to be a ghost town. If you were to open a business in this town, if I was opening up a business, the first thing I would do is, first of all, drive down the boulevard, because that's where you want to be, because that's where the traffic is. But then drive the side streets and see how the people in Coolidge really take pride in the town. And it's a disgrace. It really is. And you cannot please 100% of the people 100% of the time. It is virtually impossible. All you can do up sitting here as a council member is do what you think is best for the majority of Coolidge, because there's always going to be people unhappy. That's the way it is. That's human beings. I think that the Planning and Zoning Commission did a fine job with this. I like that you have to have it licensed. And if you hurt some people, you're going to hurt people. I mean, it's just the way it is in government and in everyday life. And so I commend the Planning and Zoning to come up with this and kind of like meet them in the middle.
I would just say that codes don't clean up communities. People do. We can write all the codes we want, but like you said, at the end of the day, people are the ones that will find ways to either violate it or clean it up themselves. But when it comes to American government, private property was and has always been a hallmark. So it's important that we do not code people to death. We can't change them. They need to take pride in their own property. And from a government standpoint, we need to protect their property rights.
Mr. Miller, you and I have had a number of conversations about this very issue since the initial group came forth and wanted, they didn't like being cited, and they didn't think it was fair. I happen to agree with personal property rights, but I made that much statement here, and I got just as many emails and calls and walk-ins on people who thought that was a good statement as thought it was a bad statement. This is another one of those issues, kind of like our budget. Nobody walked away from that budget happy. None of us got everything we wanted, but everybody got something. And I look at this and I hear what Councilmember Lewis is saying, and other than doing away with this code, I see that it is a step of coming back the other way, of allowing a little more freedom, but it's a compromise for those who call and say, we don't want any RVs. We don't even want them parked in our street getting the batteries charged on the way to quail season or dove season. you know, that's wrong. Why don't you cite them? Well, because by the time you cite them, they're gone and they're not back. But what I'm saying is, it's an issue that provokes the thought and the opinions, and all you have to do is listen to the people up here, and we're just 7 of us, and you see what happens when you start to, you know, interfere in people's right to utilize their property the way they see fit. In saying that, though, we have a Planning and Zoning Commission that doesn't get paid anything and puts up with a lot of aggravation and does a lot of work to come to a solution, something that we ask them to do. And whether you agree with it or not, you know, it would have been just as well for me to never have this conversation, but it didn't work out that way, and that's why we're here. But I do think that it's a step in the right direction. I think that it allows people to have a little more flexibility. You know, some of these guys that called me, they don't have a fence, and they couldn't afford a fence. If they could afford a fence, they'd have had a fence. So, you know, there's all kinds of things that we can discuss and talk about, and I think we've pretty much ran the gamut. So I'm going to ask if there's anybody here that wants to do, and these ordinances, they do change. They can change. You can continue to work. If this one doesn't pass, then we're right back to where we started in the very beginning anyway. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask and see if there's a motion to approve this, or whatever we're going to do. I'm going to need a motion. So,
Mayor.
Yeah.
I move to approve this ordinance, but removing the 1 RV per 5,000 square feet of lot area.
So
Mayor.
what?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, is there a second to that motion?
Is there a second to that motion?
Mayor.
Well, wait a second. So that motion is going to die for lack of a second,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor? Okay.
So are we, this is the time for motions. Are we still discussing, or are we?
Whatever you want to do, Mr. Mayor. If you want to call for another motion.
I think
the
we've
first
heard just-
motion, I think, died for
First
lack of a
motion
second.
died for lack of a second. Okay.
Mayor. I've tried 3 times, yeah. I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 15-11 with the caveat that we add boats into the definition of recreational vehicles. The death of motions, I guess.
Mr. Mayor, is there not a second to that motion?
I didn't hear one.
Okay, so okay, so now we've had, that motion will die for lack of a second. Do you want to call for another motion, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I do. Does anybody want to try it again?
I would have passed this time.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance number 15-11 as presented by and voted on by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Norma?
Councilmember Huddleston.
No.
Councilmember Hudson.
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez.
Yes.
Councilmember Murrieta.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis.
No.
Vice Mayor Henry.
No.
And Mayor Thompson.
Yes.
4-3. It passed.
Okay, item number 28. Ordinance number 15-12, an ordinance of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Coolidge, Arizona, rezoning a certain parcel of land from single-family residential R1 to general services C3, consisting of approximately 9,247 square feet, 0.21 acres, more or less, generally located near the intersection of Pima Avenue and Arizona Boulevard, and legally described as Lot 21 and the east one quarter of Lot 20, Block 1 of West Coolidge, according to the plat map of record in the office of the County Recorder of Pinal County, Arizona, recorded in Book 4 of the maps, page 3. Is this another one of those cleanup items?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The Planning and Zoning Commission considered this rezone. It was one that the city staff initiated. This property was zoned for commercial use in 2006. Mr. Hudgens actually requested this rezoning. I think it was the former Hudgens Ford property. This is a property that lies to the west of the alley, just to the west of the intersection of Pima and Arizona Boulevard, up there near the northwest corner of that intersection. When the city filed or adopted the citywide zoning map in 2009, that map did not reflect his desire to have that property for commercial. He had no idea that the city changed the zoning back to residential. He was surprised by that, and when we looked into the history, we told him that we would initiate a rezoning to give him what he had previously on the property. And so we went before the Planning Commission with the ordinance, filed the hearing, and invited property owners to weigh in on this request, and we received no comment against the rezoning, and the Commission did recommend unanimously to approve the rezoning of that property back to what the property owner had originally requested. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councilmember, okay, great.
Mr. Miller, just for clarification, I do know there was a proposition a few years ago that says if we change something from commercial or mixed use, whatever, to residential, then we're on the hook, the difference to give to the owners. That's not something he's looking at. He just wants it changed, right? We're not looking
Correct,
at possible.
Yeah. In fact, I believe that the zoning code, when it was adopted by the mayor and council, the new map predated that Prop 207. Otherwise, you might have had a challenge today that we did something to change the zoning and devalue the property. All we're doing is respecting his request, giving him what he originally had. But you're absolutely right. Prop 207 is that land use law that protects the rights of property owners, so that the government doesn't do something in a zoning decision to diminish the property value.
But it was approved in 2006 to change it, correct?
Yeah, the council's original decision on this was in 2006. When the council adopted the zoning map in 2009, it didn't honor that decision for whatever reason. It may have been just a Scribner's error on the map. That happens.
Yeah, I personally know the property owner. I worked for him for 18 years when it was Hudson's Ford, and the only thing he cares about is making it where it's make him more money when he sells it. So he's not looking at going out to the city of Coolidge. He just wants to make it so he can profit from it. So.
Anybody down here? Is that it? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, for the record, he did say through this process that he was trying to get the alley abandoned. This does not do that in any way, shape, or form. The alley still stays intact. That's a completely separate process that he would have to go through. And I'm not sure the city would necessarily, or this staff would necessarily agree to an abandonment of an alleyway.
Rick, can I ask you a question? Now the previous people that owned that was Tate Auto Center, and they actually had a bunch of wholesale cars that were just junk sitting there. If in fact that building does get sold and it turns into a car lot or something, are we going to have regulations on making sure that that's not going to be a dump area for automobiles or parts or anything like that?
That's a good question. And right now the property is technically vacant. I think they've got a couple of storage sheds on that property that are for sale. I've been onto them a little bit about the weeds in the past on that lot because the weeds got a little bit overgrown. But when that property does develop for a permanent use, they go through a major site plan review process, and through that process we'll identify how the property is developed for screening to the residential neighborhood to the west, and make sure setbacks are adhered to, and that we don't do anything to negatively impact the property owners immediately adjoining this property.
Yeah, because that property is actually not a part of the parcel that's sitting right there with
That's correct.
Sheds on there. That's just a little place of the house.
Correct.
Was torn down, but they were using it just for junk cars and everything. It was an eyesore, especially from the boulevard. So I just want to make sure that if in fact another business comes in, that's not going to be used for a junkyard.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve as read, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Norma? All in favor?
Aye.
No, I got to
All right,
take
we got to have a roll call.
Roll.
Yeah.
Councilmember Lewis,
Yes.
Councilmember Murrieta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hudson,
Yes.
Councilmember Huddleston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Henry,
Yes.
and Mayor Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 29. consider approval to fill a full-time Human Resources Director position for the City of Coolidge.
Honorable Mayor and Council, staff is recommending, well, before you tonight for consideration is an item where staff is recommending to fill a full-time Human Resources Director position for the City of Coolidge. With the recent changes in the Finance Department, the HR analyst has chosen to apply for the Accounting Supervisor position internally, causing a vacancy in the Human Resources Department. So the vacancy in the HR department gives us the opportunity to evaluate our HR needs. And as we all know, the HR department is a critical department within any organization. So with that being said, staff feels that the city is in need of an HR director for the Human Resources Department to provide direction, guidance, and knowledge regarding proper human resources operations, and also to maintain compliance with labor laws when assisting our employees. With the many challenges and changes that occur in the workplace each day, it is important that the individual have the skill set and experience to perform the many functions that pertain to personnel matters. This not only protects the city, but it also protects the employee. Therefore, staff is recommending to fill the vacancy with the Human Resources Director at a range 74. This item is not a budgeted position, but is a vacant position in the salary plan. This position, if approved, would be funded 100% through the general fund budget. So again, staff is asking for approval to fill a full-time Human Resources Director. And at this time, I entertain any questions that I, myself, or City Manager Flatley can answer.
Yes, Mayor.
I'm all for filling that position. However, with the qualifications that is required and the knowledge that that person has to have, I think a 74 is too low.
A range 74?
Yeah,
Yes.
range
Okay.
74.
Well, we can definitely look at that, Honorable Mayor and Vice Mayor Henry. That is the salary plan, the 2015 salary plan that was approved by council. That's based on the survey that was done back when the salary range compensation and classifications was performed. Again, we can look at it, bring back an item. If you're looking to increase or move that position to a different range, we would have to look at that and then come back at a later date unless you want to set something tonight.
Well, Norma, 74 is, if they feel it's too low, the city manager can start higher up, can't
That
he?
is correct. That is correct. The range right now, currently for range 74, the entry level is 68,000. Let me look at, I'm sorry, this paper is too short here. 68,793, and it goes to a maximum of 103,190. Our practice has always been to start a new position at an entry level, but there has been times where we bring someone in that has the qualifications and experience, and we look at giving them either a 5 or 10% above the entry level. So we can definitely look at that. Maybe our finance director can share where the funding is coming from and how she figured the new revenue, new money that we have to cover this position. So, Lisa, do you mind sharing like what we have available? And
I would like to share that with you. I did not print that item,
Okay.
but I believe we had roughly 15,000, wasn't it, left over in our general fund?
13,651 to be exact.
Right, unbudgeted money when we ended the budget process. When we passed the final budget on June 22nd, in that budget was built in us keeping the same amount of money that we collected on property tax as the previous year, because we had not actually voted on that property taxes yet. When we voted on that in July, we actually went up by our 2%. We knew that was going to increase our revenues by approximately $70,000, less the $30,000 that we probably will lose on the money that's given back to the residential properties when they settle how they're going to do that. So we roughly had around $40,000 of unbudgeted monies to put toward this position. Generally, I would not expect us to fill this position. Generally speaking, is somewhere around 10% below the midpoint. Or I think we actually looked at midpoint.
Correct.
So I think we have the money to cover this, should council decide to go forward with this.
Yeah, what I handed out was the League of Cities tally of all the cities between 10,000 and 50,000 population. And there's 28 cities, and even though there's a couple of blank spaces, actually I checked on it, and all of those blank spaces have human resource directors. So all 28 cities from 10,000 to 50,000 have human resource directors.
So in that range, I mean, if I'm looking at the right stuff, they go from like 61 to 90. Of course, Paradise Valley's the one with 90, and, you know, they have money, so. But what I'm thinking is, don't you, Dennis, the city manager can set the salary, can't he? If somebody comes in and it's 68,000, and he feels this person's worth 85,000, can he make him an offer?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as long as he's in that salary range that's set for the 74.
I believe it was 103, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's the max.
I don't expect him to offer somebody $107,000 to be the HR, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, this is the reason we never had one, because the recession hit right after we lost our last director, and
How much
she
did that
retired, so we couldn't afford to have a director at that time.
What I'm saying is, we're requiring them to have the knowledge of all of the laws and the degree and all that kind of stuff, and we have other people in different places that don't have degrees that are at a higher range. Why are we making the range so low?
I don't think it's an issue of, well, we could start them at the midpoint, protect the position, and put them in a higher thing where their starting is a little higher, because we do have, like she says, a couple positions, like we just created a position this last budget whose salary is over the midpoint for a new position. You mean, so we're doing that with this one, but we're putting, you know, I think it needs to be up, and then we have discrepancies with the director's positions throughout the city. They're all over the place, and actually some who get paid more have less responsibility and duties, and some that get paid less. So I think there needs to be some more balance, instead of, you know, one person who's overseeing 30 people get paid 60 grand a year, and one person who oversees herself gets paid over 100 grand. I mean, I think to protect the position, like Ms. Henry's saying, instead of saying the city manager has the authority to start on what he wants as long as he's not going over the high range, protect the position, put the grade up so that the starting salary, regardless if Bob thinks the guy's worth 80 grand or not, there's a starting salary for the position point blank. If you like the person for the job, they get at least the minimum, which would be more than this.
Also, I should add, just real quick, a point. When we had an analyst like Rachel, and Rachel did a fine job, whenever she had technical questions or questions about labor law and so on, she had to call Dennis, our legal attorney, and at his hourly rate,
This has not been raised in
which
over
hasn't
like
been
80
raised in a
years.
number of years. But,
Yeah, but it was high.
but
years
you know,
ago.
what happens is that a human resource director has that knowledge, like you were saying, Jackie. But instead of picking up the phone and always calling Dennis for personnel advice, we would be saving money if we had a director that had that knowledge.
I agree with that.
And I agree with you, Bob. I have no problem with the director's that position. I've thought we've needed it all along. And also, I mean, and eventually you probably need somebody under that person to help, because there is a lot of things that you have to do. But I'm just saying, I know you have the right to start them wherever. I would just like to see that moved up, maybe to a 79. And you start them what you think. I mean, I know you have that right. I just think that if we're going to do this, let's do it right.
Honorable Mayor and Vice Mayor Henry, can I just interject something here, because
Hold on, Lisa. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Why would we do that? I mean, just good businesses, if it's good for the employee, it's good for us. Let's just start off on a low rate. Bob, can you fill that spot with a qualified person? It's just good business. If
Well,
you can
we'll
fill
be-
it with a qualified person, then
We'll be advertising, and and we can put, depending on qualifications, like we usually do, we'll get a lot of applicants, and we'll see where they're at.
Supply and demand. Why would we offer more when?
No, hold on. Anybody down here? Got anything? Go ahead.
Just, whenever we do this, I suggest we move forward if we want the HR position, and we could always go back and study the positions like you do, instead of just picking this one out. I think if there are some in here that we're questioning, then we do a minor study on the positions.
Okay.
But at least we're moving forward in this, because I agree. I think just looking at some of the bigger cities, I mean, the one for Mesa, Tucson's 111,000. I mean, that's almost between half and $750,000. And yeah, I mean, so I think the range is probably okay based on the other cities around it. But I'd say we move forward and then we go back and study it. I wouldn't want to stop and then take, because studies cost a lot of money.
Yes, they do.
And to be accurate and to be real. I mean, you could look at the list and all that, but I mean, if you do an actual study on a position, then they tend to be fairly complex. But I think we move forward and the fact that the market will bear what it bears. I mean, if you find that nobody will work for us for 103,000, I think we'll find a few people probably. Just look at the quality, and I'm sure Bob does that because he's hired some good quality
The
people.
salary depending on qualifications, so that it leaves it open to people to apply, and we'll see where it falls out.
Okay, Councilmember Lewis, go ahead.
It's probably the first time it's going to happen, but I'm going to disagree with what Huddleston's saying. Because I fought tooth and nail when we did the budget over the grants director position, and we're paying twice as much as any cities 3-4 times as us, and nobody cared. It was okay, given the money, they're worth it. Now we're asking someone who I know an HR director's job is a lot harder than a grants director's job, especially looking at the qualifications and the fact they run HR for every department in our city, and we want to shortball them? I probably wouldn't be saying this if the grants director position was paid according to what the position calls for among cities like Phoenix, who pays a lot less than we do. So, I mean, if we're going to give one position, elevate the funds because that's what we want to do, why are we picking and choosing who we're going to benefit with a good salary based on qualifications? Well, I'm sure someone who applies for a HR director, you're not just going to get some run-of-the-mill person. It's going to be someone who's been doing something similar and wants to move up, kind of like what we had with Gabe, who left for Florence. Gabe was well worth what we're paying him, maybe more, a lot more in my opinion, because I wish we would have kept the guy. But he left for the opportunity. Now we have people in other cities, I'm sure, just like him, are going to look for the opportunity, so we need to reward that. So I think we need to set the minimum at a higher level and not just rely on the DOE, because still that's subjective to Mr. Flatley's opinion. No offense, not saying you have bad judgment. I'm just saying, we're putting all the power into one pot when we can control it a little bit more and make it more fair for somebody who might apply for it. Because if we don't, I think it's a smack in the face after what we just went through with the grants director position, who started out well above the midline. So I think we need to be fair. And yes, studies do cost a lot. I complain about doing studies for things all the time because we know what you could do. You don't need a study to tell you how to fix things all the time. So I agree with that with Mr. Lopez. Studies are expensive. I don't want to spend money on a study. I think when we can do it ourselves, they handed us this paper. It doesn't take much to find out what other cities are paying and kind of adjust to what we can do. So, I support what the vice mayor is saying. I hate that going against Mr. Huddleston on this, but I have to, just because if I didn't, it would negate everything I fought for when we did the budget.
Well, another interesting conversation, and the longer I sit here, the more I know how Councilmember Lewis feels, because I thought earlier we were talking about saving money, and now we want to pay more money.
We're saving money.
Just hold on, right? Yeah. Okay.
I take offense to what he said earlier when he was talking about the grants position, that we went ahead and gave the money, and we really didn't care, because Councilman Lewis, I care very much about the city of Coolidge, and for you to make that statement was inappropriate.
Okay. Well, I think we've had enough conversation about this issue. So, if there's somebody there, well, actually, this doesn't really address the salary on the motion, does it?
Just
Mr. Mayor, I think it would. I think it's all part of the package.
all part of the package?
And it's also part of our current salary plan. I mean, the position, although unfilled right now, is at level 74. So, I mean, if we're going to go out and hire this person, and then at the next time you guys look at the salary plan, you could look at, evaluate it at that time.
Right. I did just want to say that at the time that the company was hired that did our salary plan, they didn't just look at the city of Coolidge. They compared the job requirements to those cities of, they looked at Mesa, they looked at Chandler, they looked at cities our size, and they came up with that range specifically. Now, truly, I believe that was done in 2006.
I want to say that's correct.
Somewhere around there. So it is a little bit dated, but it was compared to larger cities rather than just cities our size. And I think the range is probably comparable to what most people are offering for that type of position. So we didn't just draw those numbers out of a hat. It was part of a study, and that position was part of that study. So, if we were going to reevaluate one of those, we probably should be looking at all of those.
I agree with you, Lisa, but you and I both know that when that study was done, there were some positions changed internally after the study was done.
This was not one of those that was changed. I mean,
No, absolutely not. It wasn't, but there were some. So just because they put it there doesn't make it right.
right. I just wanted, those council members that were not here at the time the study was done, we did hire a company. They did come up with those ranges for most of those positions. Yes, some of them may have been changed somewhat from the original position where they were put on that salary plan after discussions. But the Human Resources Director, that is the one that the company came in with, and that is the one that's remained on that list. I think it's a viable range for what people are paying, as Mr. Flatley showed, for those communities larger than us or our size. He does have the right to, start them anywhere in that range based on qualifications. He cannot exceed the range.
Right.
But I think if we were going to start looking at particular ones on that, we would probably need to go out and actually do a study, or at least look at the one that the league does each year, and maybe redo some of our classifications.
I'm just looking at the numbers here. It looks to me like when you look at the ones down here, if you moved it up $7 or $8 grand, whatever you did, you'd probably be on an average of what they're paying here. But nevertheless, I mean, I'm looking at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. But whoever makes the motion, I guess they can include that. They can include that in the motion, and the council can vote on it.
Mayor.
So, Vice Mayor.
Mayor, I move that I want to say this first. I know we need a HR person. I'm all for that, okay?
Thank you.
I don't agree with the salary. But with that said, I'm going to move that we fill that position, the full-time Human Resources Director position. That's it.
Second.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, be thinking on that one, okay.
The way it is.
After all that discussion.
So, Vice Mayor, the motion is to approve it as presented on the agenda and in the packet at range 74.
Well, I guess, can I add something?
Well, I think it's at range 74. I think it was clear discussion that
Right, that I would like to see it go up, so I would
you'd like to
just.
see it more in the mid-range
We
than
can
at the bottom.
advertise it at the range 74, but we need to relook at that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now, one of the things I would say is it was pretty clear from the conversation that not everybody is thrilled about the salary range. So if we're going to look at the way we're paying our directors, then I hate to say it, and I don't like spending money on studies because I think most of the time they're a waste of time, but we need them for when we go to court, don't we, Mr. Fitzgibbons? And so that is my, the way I look at it is if we're going to do it, then I guess we need to take a look at overall but only because of myself, I think of legal liabilities, because I think that, but I still believe that the city manager, if somebody comes in and he thinks they're worth 80 grand, then he can offer them 80 grand to go to work. I mean, that's his prerogative, so.
That's correct, and not patting myself on the back, but if you look around at the talent we have in our department directors, it's pretty impressive. And I know this from talking to other city managers. They would love to have the staff that we have here in Coolidge. I've heard that many times over. So trust me, I'll find somebody that you all respect and be proud of. And it may have to be 80,000. We'll see.
Yeah, and like I say, maybe I got Pinal County, what do they call it? They used to call it magmatized, but Pinal County-tized. And, I mean, that's the way they do it. They start out with a lower salary range, and then they have their max. And, I agree with these guys here. I thought that their people should have started out on some of the jobs at more money. But doing this for 13 years, I realized that litigation comes along with this, with what you guys do, with not as much us, but realistically, we need information to back up our decisions. And I think that the city manager's experience, if we really want somebody, and he makes an offer, then he has the ability to raise the offer up. That's my only. It's not like his hands are tied. We're not locking him into something.
Well, I know that. I was just thinking.
Sure. No, I hear you. And most people that you deal with that come in, a lot of times they have a figure, and if you're not I know Gabe did, so they're looking for a certain amount of money, and if they don't get it, they don't take the job. So we may run into some of that here. Who knows? But anyway, I think we're about at the end of the line in more ways than one. Report from mayor and council. I'll start over here. Councilmember Marietta.
That was a long break.
Yeah. Hope you enjoyed Europe and everywhere else you went. Councilmember Lewis.
I'm good.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
Yes. I'd like to get an update on the gas tanks at the airport. I haven't seen anything on that. I know you can't do it now, but if you could get that to us, I was just kind of curious where we are and that kind of stuff. And then, I'm not really sure, Dennis, if I can bring this up, but I've been hearing a lot about department heads telling staff that they can't come to council or talk to citizens. And I don't think our policy says that they can't.
I think, Vice Mayor, this is the time to report on like meetings and things like that you've attended. I think that'd be more is typical. I think asking for an update on a project, I think is completely fine. But I mean, I think would be the time.
All right.
Did you have meetings with staff about them not being able to talk to you?
We can't talk about it.
It's kind of like when you're on the witness stand and you say something and they won't allow it, but the jury's already heard it. So we're going to move on. Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you, sir. I'm just glad everybody was okay. I haven't heard anybody got hurt in that storm. That was brutal. I mean, my wife got caught outside waiting for the kids, and the Suburban was shaking. She called me, and she couldn't see, and it was really pretty bad, especially that house where that roof caved in. So I hope that family's okay, and I know it's covered by State Farm, so that's good. But that's what I heard anyway. That's what I heard.
There was no medical calls from the ambulance, so we're good.
Good. And I know the fire department was out. And it's just
amazing, because I was working that night.
Yeah, with all that debris flying around. There's so many trees. If you grew up here, that have been around a long time, that are broken in half and down. I've never seen so many trees down. Anyway, but we're having the League of Cities conference next week, and I'll be presiding over the public ethics and open government portion of it on Wednesday, and then also the open meeting law on Thursday. We usually have Phil Sims, I think, the attorney that does that. He's really good. So is it Sims? I think, is it?
No, it is Bill Sims. When is it? When is it next week? No, you said Bill Sims. You said Bill Sims.
Phil, I thought he was quarterback.
Phil Sims.
Yeah, it's Bill Sims. But he's a great attorney. Usually he's the one that does them. I think I've done it about 4 or 5 times, and if he's the one, it's a great session. So we'll encourage all the council members to attend that are going. So Anyway, that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I went to Coolidge Economic Development Committee meeting at Artisan Village, and it was a great meeting. You guys do a great job. A lot of exciting things that's going to be coming up, and I appreciate it. Appreciate all the work that you guys do. And then I also attended the Florence Chamber of Commerce mixer last Thursday, and I was surprised to see quite a few Coolidge business people over there. And it was at the McFarland State Park. It's the first time I've ever been there. Neat place. And it was a nice little mixer, and I think we'll be attending their mixers. I think I have them twice a month, because there's quite a few Coolidge business people that are over there. So,
Bob?
Okay, this coming Thursday, it's a pretty busy day at Artisan Village. It starts out at 9 o'clock with Barnaby Lewis presenting a cultural awareness session. He's going to talk about awareness and relationships between the 4 tribes in Pinell County and with the Artisan Village and the city and so on. That's from 9 until 11. It's just a seminar. At 11:45 is when Access Arizona holds their monthly meeting. They've decided to hold it in Coolidge at the Artisan Village. Hopefully they'll award some money. We'll see. There may be a motion to award some funding for Artisan Village from Access Arizona, but we'll see if that comes about or not. Anyway, that's 11:30. You're free to come. They serve lunch at the Artisan Village from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. And then lastly on Thursday, this is the 13th, this coming Thursday, the Chamber of Commerce, as you heard, is having their ribbon cutting for their new location from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, and Mayor will be cutting a ribbon and giving a talk. So then the next day, early in the morning at Pinell Partnership Breakfast, we'll be at Wild Horse Pass. If you're interested, it starts at 7:30 in the morning, but it'll feature the Gila River community as well as the Ak-Chin community talking about economic development plans for Pinell County. So it should be a good session. And then, of course, next week we're off to the State League of Cities in Tucson from the 18th to the 21st. And by the way, your rooms will be taken care of by the city, so as we normally do for the elected officials. So I'll have a city card for you all, so don't worry about paying for the room and board, because that's taken care of by the city. And then lastly, it's not this next week or the week after, but on the 28th, we just got a call today from Walmart. They're renovating their store, they're completing it, and they're going to have a kind of a ribbon cutting of their own. 7:30 in the morning, it's a Friday morning, and they're going to welcome people into the newly renovated on Friday the 28th.
Did I hear you right?
You did.
7:30?
7:30 in the morning, yeah.
Hopefully
yeah.
you'll just be getting in.
So,
oh dear.
Show up at 5. And go shop.
Yeah, you'll be right on time.
and apparently, from what I hear, they're really doing well. From what we know the manager well, and he says they're very, very pleased with the revenue flow at Walmart and Coolidge. So, anyway, their new store, some people have been in it already. It looks very nice. They have fabric, Jackie. So they brought back fabric, which makes
That was a special request, right?
make Bonnie Palmer and Jackie would be very happy about that. So, anyway, 28th, 7:30 in the morning. Again, another ribbon cutting. Chamber will be there, and we'll welcome the renovation of the Walmart. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Since we've last met, I've been to a good number of meetings, MPO meetings, different types of meetings. I'm not going to go into all that. I am going to mention that if any of you council members can make it to the Thursday meeting at Artisan Village, did you say 11 or 11:30, Bob?
It's 11:30. That's when they start serving lunch, and the meeting usually starts about 12. And of course, Dennis is a member of the board, so he'll be there too.
I know Councilmember Lewis and I attended the last one, and I don't know, I can't speak for him, but I found it to be very interesting. So I think for those of you that can make it, I think it would be a good idea to show up.
If you're on
Do
a
we
diet,
let you
eat
know?
before.
Do we need to let you know?
Well, I'll go ahead and put everybody's name in, you know, and that'll be fine.
And the only other thing I would say tonight is I want to thank everybody for being professional. Sometimes there's new people and there's old people and there's differing opinions, and I think that we've had some interesting conversations. And again, I go back to the budget. Not everybody's going to get what they want. Everybody will get a little of something and nobody will be happy, but let's maintain our professionalism as we leave here tonight. Thank you very much. This meeting's adjourned.
No.
Oh, I need a motion.
I move to adjourn.
Second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Nobody voted no, huh? All right, here we go.